Hello, curling fans, and welcome back to another edition of the Broom Brothers, the official podcast of the Grand Slam of Curling and the Curling Group. John Cullen here with you once again, and I'm pleased to be joined by my jolly old elf, Robbie Doherty.
Not on Facebook, not the jolly old elf. Not popular in that world, but maybe in the podcast world. John, it's good to see you, coast to coast, my friend.
Good to see you too. Yes, we're back. We're recording just 6 days before the big red man comes and gives us some. I guess he's not red, but the man in the red suit is coming. It's going to give us some gifts or some coal, maybe.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Do you think you were nice or naughty this year, Robbie?
Definitely naughty. No chance he's coming to me. But speaking of coal, we took my son, who's one, to like a Santa's Village the other day here in Charlottetown. It was kind of like different worlds. So you'd started like a generic kind of Santa's workshop. Then you walk a little bit and there was like Whoville and the Grinch was there. And then there was Frozen, the movie, and then Santa. You get to see Santa at the end sort of thing. Anyway, my son, just like his dad, cheers for the bad guy. Didn't
Loved
like
the
Santa.
Grinch?
Wanted nothing to do with Santa. He went straight to the Grinch, big hug for the Grinch, and the Grinch sold it. Did not break it a character. No, I'm sorry, young man, blah, blah, blah. Snarled at him, didn't say anything, reached into his bag, handed my son an onion, just a raw onion.
That's good. I find it funny that the Grinch is becoming a guy that's just at these things. That feels like a new development to me. Because my wife and I were just in our local sort of not like shopping district, but just like it's kind of like a cool little street with lots of shops and stuff on it. And they were doing like a Christmas thing, and they didn't even have Santa. They only had the Grinch, and I was like, what the hell?
That's marketing.
I know, right? He's like Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's turning face.
That's what I said. You got to cheer the heel. Anyway.
Yeah. Really good stuff. But yeah, nice to see you, Robbie. A few things happening in the curling world since the last time we've been here. Should say as well, we're going to be pleased to be joined by EJ Harnden a little later on in the show. His first podcast interview since the big switch with Team Gushue. Just had his first tournament as an official member of Team Dunstone this past weekend in Swift Current. So we'll get all the news from him there about the breakup, the new team, what's going on. Looking forward to chatting with EJ. But before we get to that, Robbie, we do have some curling news, even though the Guelph Slam is about a month away as we record this, a little less than a month away. We've gotten some news, and we promised on the last podcast we would talk about this on this episode. So I figure we'll start right there. The sort of announcement leaking in the middle of the St. John Slam, courtesy of Devin Haru through our CEO, Nick Sulsky. But new rule in place for Guelph: you cannot blank two ends in a row. So if you blank one end, then in the next end, you will be forced to flip the hammer to the other team after the conclusion of that end. Robbie, what are your thoughts? Are you hearing anything from curlers about their thoughts? Where are you at with the no two blanks rule?
I don't know how I feel about it. I love that they're changing. I like that there's an idea that they feel like is going to improve the game for the fans, for the television product, in terms of entertainment, making the game faster, more exciting, more rocks and play. I'm just not sure if this format's going to be the one that's going to prove that. I think we talked about this last time a little bit, but I mean, if a team blanks and I don't have the hammer, I'm doing everything to just blast and try to make them take one the next end. And then I think it's going to have to make teams get very strategic in the last half of the game. So it'll be fun to see how that plays out. Like, you really want to make sure you have the hammer in 6 or after 6 as the game progresses, just to set yourself up to have the last rock coming home. But I think, I don't know. I don't see this one sticking. Props to Nick and the crew for trying to make a change. I do think something needs to be done. I'm just not sure that this is it. Now, I've told you this before, John, and I'm not known for my intelligence. We all know that, but I'm a very visual person. Yeah. I do not, I'm not a think something through and kind of be able to put it together. I'm going to really need to see it. So I'm really, really excited to be in the Sleeman Center and just see it all unfold and how it's working, how teams make the changes, how they approach going into it. And it's definitely going to throw a few curveballs into the round robin. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's been one of those weird things where I sort of agree with you that I'm not sure on its face that I love it, but it is also the rare curling debate, at least that I've kind of heard and been a part of, where no one has an alternate solution. You
Right.
know, like it's been one of those weird things where you say to yourself, okay, well, I don't like this, or like let's say we go into Guelph and let's say it doesn't work as intended. The teams don't necessarily like it. It turns out it's not that great. If you want to eliminate blank ends, what's the other option? Right? Like that's the thing that I think I get stuck on is, you know, I think there are ways, you know, people have talked about trying to eliminate extra ends. I love the half point. You know, I think that could be a really fun thing to try, where for those of you who maybe don't know, that's where you do the draw for the button before the game. The winner of the draw to the button decides whether they want to start the game with a half point lead or the hammer. So you can never have an extra end. There's always a team that's leading by at least a half of a point, which I think is interesting, but we don't have to open that can of worms. I'm just saying, like, I think we have ideas about maybe how can we make extra ends more fair, because right now we know the team with the hammer and the extra end wins most of the time, even with the 5 rock rule. But with the blanks, it's a weird one, because if it turns out this doesn't work, I don't know what the solution is. Like, definitely flipping the hammer every end is not the solution. Like, knowing you have the hammer in the 8th end before the game starts is death, in my opinion. I thought one thing that I thought was really interesting, and this actually came up on Inside Curling that Kevin Martin brought up, and I thought was an interesting point that I hadn't considered. But like, what if you, so in the no 2 blank scenario, like what if you blank 6, right? So like, let's say it's just you go into 6, best intentions of scoring, it just doesn't work out, and you end up blanking it. You are now guaranteed to not have the hammer in 8. And does that just totally ruin the end of the game, right? Because the team that's trailing, or the team that doesn't have the hammer rather, is just going to do everything they can in 7 to blank it, to force the other team to take 1, and then it brings up, and then, you know, then the 8th end, just, they know they're guaranteed hammer in 8. I feel like that, to me, is like one part of it that's really sticking out as like, oh yeah, I don't know if we want that necessarily, where, you know, it kind of changes the strategy of the back half of the game, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing too is I find it gets really clouded around the term blanks. Like, I get it, like zeros on the scoreboard, it doesn't look exciting, but it's not like most of the blanks these days, you know, are a lob one in the 4-foot, hit, peel it out for the blank. Like, a lot of times we're seeing, you know, houses filled with rocks and angles and everything, and, you know, a couple good run back doubles or a triple here and there or whatever, and you know, everything's cleared out. Like, to me, that's pretty exciting. That takes a lot of skill. And so I'm not even on the I'm not even on the side of trying to eliminate blanks. I just don't understand why blanks get shit on so much, if that makes sense.
I agree. I totally agree. I think so too. I think, and this is the thing also that I will bring up about the 2 blank rule, is that, you know, I think one thing the 5 rock rule has done is it's really made strategy very interesting in a way that it hasn't been in a long time, right? Like with the 3 rock rule and then the 4 rock rule, it was like ends tended to look the same all the time, right? Like one team would generally be playing offense, one team would generally be playing defense. There wasn't a lot of room for a balanced strategy. You would also see in the 4 rock rule, you know, if a team had a lead and didn't have the hammer, they could almost blank at will, right? If you can peel on your second's first stone, you know, the strategy looked the same a lot of the time. And I feel like with the 5 rock rule, one thing that's really excited me about it is not just that there is more offense. It's easier to score 2. It's easier to score 3 than it ever has been before. But ends also look really different. Like there's a lot of different ways to approach this, the opening of the end strategy, and then the end of the end strategy also looks a lot different. And I think the one issue that the 2 blank thing will bring into play is that if you do have a blank, the strategy in the next end is going to look the same, I think. I think it's going to create these ends where you are going to have a potentially boring end, because the strategy for the team without the hammer is going to dictate that, yeah, you're trying to force your opposition to take one, and that's a little easier to do if you know that they're just going to draw an empty house. So that's the thing I maybe don't necessarily love about it, is that you might see ends where there's a sort of a pat strategy that we just don't see right now in the 5 rock rule. Like you said, even if there are blanks, they're usually coming after runbacks, doubles, triples, whatever the case, right? So I think that's the one thing that I would be concerned about, is that we're actually making the game a little bit more quote unquote boring in a sense. But again, we'll have to see it play out. Maybe I'm wrong. Like maybe it will encourage offense, and it's just something you and I haven't seen before, and we don't know. But
yeah. And in St. John's, after the announcement, a lot of the players were split. Like a lot of, I don't want to say half and half. I think maybe there was a few more that were skeptical than pumped for it, but there was definitely a lot supporting it. So I think it depends on the team. I think it's going to make for a really interesting week of curling, especially early on. And those are the, days where it's just naturally not as exciting as, the playoffs are further away and teams aren't in must-win games, that sort of thing. But I think it's going to be interesting, and it adds a little bit of excitement for the event in Guelph.
For sure, yeah. Well, and speaking of the event in Guelph, another change that curling fans got word of this week. I think you and I both kind of knew this was happening back in St. John's, but the greater public finding out this week that the teams were allowed to draft their own pools. So
that's right.
So on the men's and the women's side, the top 4 teams by ranking got to draft their own pool. And some interesting things coming out of that, Robbie. I would say let's just start with your initial reaction to the idea of teams drafting their own pool. Do you just like that on its face?
I love it. I absolutely love it. I think it's great. I think it's just something we haven't seen before, but it adds a little bit of excitement around the event. So there's different stories that can be set up from it. So, I can't remember the exact picks right now off the top of my head, but let's say, I'm number 16 and you're number 1 and you drafted to play me first. When I play you on the ice, I'm going to remember that. And I'm certainly going to want to try a little extra harder to stick it to you. But I think it was cool. And the fact that I hosted the draft, and it was really cool to have everybody on the call at the same time. And you're trying to kind of get a comment out of them and get them rolling and maybe take a little shot at each other. And there were a few shots, but I think it's fun. And then I just think it's something new. It kind of feels like something before the event to kind of set it up, kind of like a weigh-in or something for a boxing match or a pre-event press conference at a hockey game or something like that. I don't know. It's a little bit it's a little bit extra just oomph and pizzazz around the event. And it's not like there's easy games anyway in the slams. It doesn't matter who you pick, just because you pick number 14, like they're still the 14th best team in the world in that sport. Like they're good. I remember first time I qualified for a Grand Slam, and a couple of weeks before the event, I was talking to, I forget who it was, someone here. And I said, man, like our pool is stacked. There's no easy game or something along those lines. And someone looked at me and said, listen, if you're in a slam and you're looking for the easy game, you are the easy game.
Yeah.
So that's a fair point. So anyway, I think it was cool just to go through it, just to experience it once. I think it just adds a level of entertainment. And, obviously I think it's an advantage for the stronger teams. They get to, try and pick as many teams as they feel like they match up well against. And there's certainly some different picks than I had expected.
Yeah, well, I think Rachel Homan picking Sungyoon Ha first overall. Ha coming into the event ranked number 8. Not wanting to, I think people would say the obvious pick there would be Danielle Inglis. the sponsors exemption. So they're ranked, I believe, number 33 in the world, ranked number 16 for the purposes of this event. But, they're the hometown team in Guelph. And so that was part of the reason why they got the sponsors exemption. And of course, we're in last year's Scotties and the PointsBet Invitational and all that. They're a good team, but I think definitely a team you would assume that Rachel Homan, looking to pick first overall, would have been, targeting, and instead going for the young South Korean team. I thought right off the bat, that was definitely a pick that stood out as pretty interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was her first pick, was it not?
It was, yeah, first overall pick. So you'd think she would go for Inglis or maybe Skurlik playing in their first slam of the year. There was definitely some options there. But electing to go with Sung Yoon Ha, which I thought was
but I think that also supports what I kind of said is, just because someone's seeded, 14, 15, 16, it's not like they're a bad team, like you said about Inglis. Sure, they're seeded, in the low 30s in the world, but look at it, like they went on a great run at the Scotties last year. They've been around, they can play. So yeah. Alina Petz, she didn't wait too long, I don't think, to pick Inglis though.
Well, I think with I haven't seen the video yet. I know that's coming out shortly, as we're recording this on Thursday here, but yeah, that was definitely interesting, I thought. And another thing, like further to your point about the seedings maybe not mattering as much, we actually saw what I thought. So Holman picks Ha, who's seeded 8th coming into the event first, but then it goes all the way to the snake. So Rachel doesn't pick again until pick number 8 and 9, and then ends up with Caitlin Laws and Isabella Vrano, who are ranked 14th and 15th. Yep. So again, it was teams ahead of Homan that were maybe passing on picking the theoretically lower ranked teams. Caitlin Laws has been playing hot. Isabella Vrano has won slams before, so it is interesting to see what each of the teams who are making the picks, in this case, it was Homan, Tiranzoni, Einarson, and Kim that were making the selections, interesting to see how they internally rate the teams versus, where they're sitting at, in the WCT rankings right now. So that was fun to watch too, or fun to see. Oh, and but
the best part is the number 1 seed got to pick their crossover game.
Right.
So yes. Rachel on the women's side got to pick who they play, from the top 4. Meanwhile, every skip or at least a team representative from those teams were on the call with them. So it was really cool to see that. So it's going to be an all Canadian matchup. With, Holman and Einarson, and also it lined up that Kim is playing Gim. So
right.
So there's just cool storylines that came out of it, and I hope they do it again. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously see how it plays out. I mean, I think too, one thing that people don't realize that, I've seen some of the comments online of, why are you doing a draft and what's the point of this? And this is giving an advantage to the top teams.
Not Facebook.
It's actually, I didn't say Facebook. I just said online, Robbie. It is actually, though, taking away a little bit of the advantage the top teams have had, because in the last few slams, the way the pools were done, obviously we have 4-team pools, but you need to play a 5th game. And the top teams were given the weakest team in the opposite pool as their crossover game. And as you said already, the crossover game in this tournament, the top teams were forced to choose another top team as their crossover game. And that was a way of trying to balance out the competition a little bit more. So while the draft was selected as a way of, maybe building more storylines and everything, it's also on the part of the Grand Slams a way to try to find a way into maybe balancing the pools a little bit more accurately. So, so it'll be interesting to see, because if you were going with the previous format, you would have had Homan, Inglis would have been in the pool with Homan, but then you also would have had Homan's crossover game would have been the lowest ranked team in another pool. So it might have been Skurlik or Kitazawa or Vrano, who did end up in Rachel's pool anyway. But typically how it's been working is the top teams, quote unquote, are getting 2 easier, quote unquote, games than they have been, and now they're not. So, so this is, I think it's, to me, an interesting way to see if this is a better way of balancing the pools overall as well.
Yeah, good point. No, I agree with everything you said. Although, yeah, and I'm just going to reiterate though my point that like no matter how you look at it, no matter how you do them, every game's tough at a Grand Slam. That's what makes the Slam special.
For sure. And I thought, going over
there's no PEI in the field.
There's no you and me. Yeah, you and me exactly. Are not over. There's been some rumors, we've floated it out there that me, Ryan Fry, John Morris, and Brent Lang are going to make an all-retired team, and we're not in there either. That would be a free space on the. I mean, they all have a lot of accolades, but we're also all very retired and old. So, you're definitely not getting that in the field. Just looking at the men's very quickly, I thought was the only, the men's pools I think are pretty evenly distributed. There wasn't quite the same storyline, with like there was with Homan and avoiding Inglis. But we did see Ross White go last. In theory, how the top 4 teams were judging them to be the hardest team, even though they are in theory seeded 9th coming into this event. So, and for those of you who don't know, the seeds this time around were done on a combination of overall standings and year to date. So that's why it's maybe the seeds are not looking exactly like the rankings on the World Curling Tour website. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting fact to me as well, where you think of the team that's in theory ranked 9th getting picked last. I thought, again, it's just an interesting insight into maybe how the top teams evaluate their peers.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. And I wasn't surprised at all to see it be Team White, the last pick. I wouldn't want to play those guys.
They're no, really absolutely
good.
Not.
They just happen to live in a small country with Bruce Mowat.
Yeah. No, I love it. I'm excited. And last word on the men's side, Jordan McDonald squeaking into the field. For some curling fans may be familiar with them, maybe a little bit more so now that they had that semifinal run at the PointsBet earlier this year, as they defeated Matt Dunstone and Kevin Cooey to make it to the semifinals of the PointsBet. Acquitted themselves very well. Young team out of Manitoba. What do you make of Jordan McDonald's Slam debut in Guelph?
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. I actually had a little note to myself to talk about them, because they're the team that I can't wait to see at the Slam. I saw a little bit of them during the PointsBet. I've caught them a few times just on streams on Curling Zone and YouTube and that sort of thing. And they're just fearless. They're not scared. They don't care who they're playing. And that's pretty much the exact opposite of what the other teams want to face at a Slam. A team that is, I don't want to say they have nothing to lose, but I mean, let's be honest, they're very early on in their men's career. Naturally, the media, the fans, they're probably not going to have much expectations for them in terms of results. Like, let's face it, the Grand Slams, it's really hard. If you're in a Grand Slam, if you're actually playing, it's very difficult. There's no easy ends. It's just, you're physically tired, you're mentally tired. It's just a big deal. So it's going to be interesting to see how they respond to that challenge of just making the adjustment and, bigger settings, kind of your first time in the big leagues. But man, they can shoot, they can play, like they have the tools. And they were literally the team that when I saw them in the PointsBet, I said, they're going to be around for a long time and they're going to be really tough to play against.
Yeah. I mean, they almost beat Team Jacobs last year in the Manitoba Provincials twice. Jordan made a miracle shot in the 10th end to almost beat Team Jacobs in the initial double knockout phase of the Manitoba Provincials last year. And yeah, just a really good, really young team. And I agree, they can all shoot. And to your point, I remember back in Nisku, Ryland Kleider had got into that event. They were the young team that kind of snuck in Nisku. And I was talking with Trevor Johnson and Josh Mattern at the end of the Slams at the Grand Slam of Karaoke, and kind of asked them about their week, and they kind of said two things. They were like, well, we were happy with how we played, like we feel like we played well, but the Slams are different. And they had played in one Slam before, but they were like a junior team. They got a sponsors exemption back in 2019, I believe. So that is almost like it doesn't even count. You're kind of playing with free money when you're 19 years old and you get a sponsors exemption into a Slam. But when you actually earn your way into a Slam like they did at the Co-op Canadian Open there in Nisku, it was just funny. Yeah, they were just like, it's just different. Like your misses get punished in a way that they don't get punished on tour. And you have to be sharp on every single shot. And like I said, they thought we played pretty well. We're not disappointed with how we played, but it's different. And
I agree.
So it'll be curious to see how that goes for Team McDonald and Guelph. But yeah, they're great guys. Got a chance to chat with them a little bit at the Best of the West last year in the points bet, and they're good kids. And yeah, I'm excited to see them there. Excited to see them there for sure. Okay, Robbie, we'll talk about one more thing before we get into the interview with EJ Harnden. And, I think people this has come to the forefront a little bit over the last few weeks. They lost out in the quarterfinals in Swift Current, and they needed to go through the C Road to get there. Team Gushue, speaking of EJ Harnden, we obviously know they made a big change. EJ leaving the team and Brendan Bottcher coming in. But since Brendan's been on the team, Robbie, I think fair to say the results haven't quite been there. And, it's not like, they still made the quarterfinals at the Slam in St. John's and they still made the quarterfinal. Like, they're still qualifying, but the bar is so high for Team Gushue. They're now only 5 points ahead of Brad Jacobs on the world rankings. So they're in danger of not being the number one ranked Canadian team for the first time in a very long time. First time this quad, that's for sure. What do you make of them so far? We've now had a few events. We've had the Pan Continental. We've had a couple slams. We've had Swift Current to see them. The results haven't been perfect. I mean, they also made the finals in Nisku, but not on the podium at the PanCon, quarterfinals at St. John's, quarterfinals in Swift Current. What do you make of what's going on there and what you've seen out of them so far?
My personal thoughts, if I was them, I certainly wouldn't be hitting the panic button. The first response that Brad Gushue himself said, I believe it was on a podcast, was it's going to take time. And I think that people, curling fans were used to seeing team changes. It's nothing new in the sport now, not like this quadrennial, but it's something it's part of curling. If you're on a team, someone's going to get kicked off, or you're going to get kicked off, or you're going to kick someone off. It's just part of the game. But I mean, this change that they made when they, elected to part ways with EJ and brought in Brendan Bottcher. Brendan Bottcher, in my opinion, he's a skip. He was a skip his whole life. And I don't mean that in terms of it's not going to work because he's a skip. I just mean that it's one thing if, they replaced EJ with a front end player, Samagalski. I'm just totally making that up. And he just kind of comes in, does what he always does. I think it takes a lot less time for the team to kind of gel around that. Brendan has to make a lot of changes in the way that he sees, or the way he plays the game of curling. Like his whole career, or most of his career, he's skipped that team. He's called the shots, he's called line, and he's been on the other side of guiding his sweepers. Well, now he's actually sweeping. And I think when you make a change like that, it's if you think it's just going to gel right off the bat, I just don't think that's realistic, especially at the level that Team Gushue plays at. And, they're always in grand slams. They're not playing toaster spiels anytime. It's not like, in college football when you have a warm-up game, you go out and, play
exactly. You pay some bad college team to come to your school so you can whip their ass.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yes, I agree. They don't look like they used to, but I think Brendan brings so much in terms of shooting, and he's got so much to learn. It's going to take time, but I do think they will be back sooner than later, maybe stronger.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's the some of the comments are a little premature, that I've seen, but yeah, I agree with you. And I think it's not only that Brendan has been a skip this long, but it's also the way that he skipped, right? Like, I think everybody's pretty aware watching Brendan Bottcher over the years, like very similar to Brad Gushue. Like when Brendan Bottcher's the skip, it's Brendan Bottcher's team. Yep. And he makes all the big decisions. He's going to make all the decisions about strategy, about how to approach the game. He wants to be the leader. He wants to have the say in everything. And this is not me saying that's a bad thing. That's just the way that it is. I think some other skips do thrive on, a little bit more of a little more input from the team, right? Like I think Mike McEwen is a great example of that, of, he likes to be the leader too, but he also wants to feel very connected to his teammates. And, I think with Brad and Brendan, they're guys that they want to be in control of the whole program. And so for Brendan to not be in control, on this team, I think that just takes time to get used to too. And like, we had him on this podcast and he talked about how he's an open book, open mind, willing to learn. And I do believe that, but I also do think it takes time to go like, okay, I'm not the boss and I am taking direction from the boss and I've got to learn that. And so, yeah, I think it's definitely a learning curve for him too. Just learning how to slot in at second and yeah, like I said, maybe not be the director of the program. So yeah, we'll see how, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add one more thing too that I wanted to mention. If you look at the schedule that team has had since Brendan joined, I think their first event was the Pan Continental Championship. Yep. So, hi, welcome to the new team. Here's your maple leaf on your back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, then we're going to a Grand Slam in Nisku.
Pretty
much your hometown, Brendan. So families around, and you probably have a lot of distractions. And then, by the way, the next one after that. It's a Grand Slam in St. John's, and we are like Frank Sinatra in Las Vegas there, or like the Beatles in Liverpool. That's how I described that team. So it was a tough time for somebody to jump in with the team, and it just happened to work out that way. There's it's a cool thing, but I would say Swift Current was kind of probably maybe their first. I don't want to say normal kind of experience.
A little more low key.
Yeah. And I think there was another event in there somewhere as well, but like hometown, 7,000 seat arena screaming to cheer on your team. You don't see that often in curling. Wearing a maple leaf on your back. You don't really see that every year sort of thing. So it's been a lot of pressure for Brendan to come in. And I just think it's just going to take more time. And I'm going to make an early prediction. By the Brier, they'll be firing.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. Well, we are going to bring in EJ Harnden. Speaking of Brad Gushue, just before we do, Robbie, I think it's only fair to say some congratulations are in order. We saw this past week, Colleen Jones officially appointed to the Order of Canada. And then we got the news this week that Kevin Martin, the old bear, will also be appointed to the Order of Canada next year. And just congratulations to the two of them, two amazing stewards for the game of curling, fully deserving of their appointments. And I think in both their cases, not just the accomplishments they've had on the ice, but all their contributions off the ice as well. Coaching, Colleen doing so much of that stuff, and Kevin coaching as well. And then also all the work he did to get the Grand Slam of curling off the ground. Two very deserving appointees. And I feel like congratulations are in order to both of them.
Yep, I echo that. Two great people, certainly gave a lot to the game. And, Kevin had the junior spiel for so long in Edmonton, and me living in the Maritimes, I certainly wasn't strange to see Colleen Jones around the rink and giving back. And so, listen, it's, as you mentioned, it's not just the wins and losses or the trophies. It's everything they put into the game. So two great people, well-deserved. Congratulations.
Congratulations. And with that, we will move on to our interview with EJ Harnden. All right, we are pleased to be joined by EJ Harnden, now a proud member of Team Matt Dunstone. Thrilled to have him here. And EJ, we are going to start this the way we start every show, and that is with the top four. I'm going to give you 4 questions, and you're just going to give me the first answer that pops into your head, okay?
Sounds good. We'll do it.
All right, here we go. Who is someone you have never played with before that you would like to play with?
Never played with before. I'm gonna go with Kevin Martin.
Oh, great choice. We were just talking about him before we brought you on. New Order of Canada. It's that's a good guy.
Right. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, good guy to have on your side. If you know that both sets of rocks are good and there's no problems with any of the rocks, what color are you taking?
Red.
If there was a deli in Sault Ste. Marie that named a sandwich after you, the EJ Harnden sandwich, what's on it?
Oh, it's not too fancy. I don't know. I'm gonna go with like a traditional club. Maybe light mayo.
Ooh, real special club. It's got light mayo on it.
Yeah, I'm a picky eater, so
Well, this should be an exciting interview.
yeah.
Exactly.
You want to talk grilled cheese and like,
Okay, final question. How would your bitterest rival describe you?
intense.
Yeah. Nice.
One word. Sure.
Yeah, no,
Go with that one.
I agree with that. Robbie, go ahead.
Yeah, no, welcome, EJ. It's good to see you. Listen, I'm just going to get right to it. New team. You know, some people on the team you're very familiar with. The other two, not so much. How's it going so far?
Really good. Obviously, like the person that knows me really well and I know really well is my brother, Ryan. So no surprise there. And not much has changed, to be quite honest. And that's a good thing. You know, this past week in Swift Current, obviously it was nice to get on the ice officially as a new team. It also was a really good opportunity, and it was a nice little treat to be able to play with Ryan again in Red Deer. So that was awesome. You know, a ton of fun. It felt really natural. Obviously, you know, there was no trying to figure things out with Ryan and myself in terms of sweeping. The only thing that happened is I pushed Ryan back over to the other side that he was sweeping on when we played together, and he was good about that. And he's obviously an extremely strong sweeper on the other side, so there's no worries there. And then, you know, with Matt and Colton, obviously, you know, like as you guys both know, I mean, the curling, you know, circle is pretty small. So we get to see one another, especially, you know, some of the top teams that have been at this for a number of years, you know, all the time on and off the ice, staying in the same hotels. And so you get a really good sense of, you know, for the most part, who people are, and off the ice, you get to see what they're like on the ice. So with Matt and Colton, obviously I've been able to be around them as competitors for a number of years. And nothing really surprised me for the most part, other than like Colton, I thought was a little quieter than he is. He's, you know, actually, you know, very outgoing and lots of really good conversation. Likes to joke around, tons of laughs so far. And I always knew Colton was intense, like on the ice, like, but more of like a controlled intensity, I guess. I don't know if it's like at third is just different, but even in Red Deer, I said to Ryan and I were rooming together, and I said, it's like, I've seen Colton. I'm like, this feels different. And Ryan was like, yeah, he's just, you know, that much more sort of like intense at third than maybe he is at second. And there was a few times even this past weekend where he come flying through the house and he's yelling. I would just almost like look up, like, where'd that come from? I'm like, man, this is awesome. I'm like, I love like how intense you are. And in a really good way, right? It's in a controlled way, but that's been nice to see, sort of like the other side, you know, those things that you don't get to see. And maybe even for him, I don't know if it's, you know, a little bit of newness, or it's a little different just being a third now versus being a second. I don't know, but that's been tons of fun. And then Matt, you know, everything that I've sort of thought with Matt has been true. Super easy to get along with. You know, we have tons of laughs and lots of really good conversations off the ice. Really easy going on the ice in terms of, you know, from a teammate perspective, leadership, that sort of thing. And then that sort of that controlled intensity, I think, similar to Ryan and now seen with Colton and myself. So it's been really, really fun and really easy. I said to a few people, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Team Jacobs, like 2013, 2014, 2015, like those number of years where, you know, there's just a lot of, you know, similarities in terms of how we approach the game. You know, the level of intensity that we play with, we're sort of like close to the edge, but, you know, not going over, and lots of laughs off the ice. So it's been a lot of fun, and, you know, some pretty good success early on. And I think there's still lots there. There's sort of a level that we haven't hit yet that I'm looking forward to us hitting.
Yeah, I'm curious, you know, you talked about Matt being a leader there for you, and that just kind of like twigged something for me. You know, you're getting towards the back half of your curling career now, and you've really played with Brad Jacobs, who is basically your age, a little bit younger than you, and then Brad Gushue, who's a little bit older than you. Was there any kind of like adjustment or like something different about Matt being like quite a bit younger than you? You haven't really had that experience in a skip before.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I mean, I have thought about that, but it never really registered for me, like in terms of like from an age perspective, like, until Matt, we talk about our ages and I laugh at how young him and Colton are. And I don't like to think of myself as like a veteran, but I'm like, I guess it's there, it's happened. I can't fight that. Right.
Yeah.
And so, we have some laughs with that, but I've never looked at it from like an age, sort of thing. Like, I feel like Matt's been in the game for so long, obviously played against each other a ton of times, namely, a couple of years ago in the Brier Final and in some big events. So, no, I don't really sort of look at it in terms of his age. I think he has a ton of experience. I just look at him as a really good player and a really good skip. I do though think like too where I think I've started to, and I am going to continue to lean into, my experience, and being, I guess, more of a bit of a veteran now, being in the later portion of my career. And so I'll continue to lean into that, and try to provide, some benefits as it relates to that experience, in terms of what I can, assist with as it relates to the team and maybe with Matt.
Can I jump in on that, John? Almost a follow-up question to what you had just mentioned. You mentioned more so the age difference. EJ, what I'm wondering is, what's it like for you now? Looking back at your career, Team Jacobs, Team Gushue, you guys won the Brier. You went to the Olympics. So did Brad. But now you're with a younger team, as we mentioned. But Colton and Matt, they haven't got there yet. They haven't won that Brier. They haven't won the trials. They haven't won the gold at the Olympics. I guess what I'm wondering is, are they maybe a little bit do they kind of tap into maybe a different level of hunger that perhaps you haven't seen in a while? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
100%, Robbie. And I think I was, in a few different ways, I was alluding to that earlier on with that, this reminds me a little bit of like that Team Jacobs before we won or just after. Like, there's just so much hunger there and just such a love for the game. Mm-hmm. Like like Matt and Colton could talk curling like nonstop, right? And there's almost like a never a day off where they don't want to be in the ice, either practicing or competing. And not to say like I don't, or or I've been on teams that don't. It's just, to your point, they haven't experienced those big wins yet, that I know they will, and hopefully I'm a part of that. And that's what is really exciting about this too, is I'd love more than anything to not only, win a few more Briers, or at least one more, or get, back to the Olympics for myself. I'd love more than anything now to be on, the side of it where I get to experience that with individuals that haven't, right? And, maybe more than anyone, or at least equal to anyone, Matt and Colton want to experience that. I mean, I can't speak for them, but I think those are, maybe some of the things that went into, what's transpired here and myself coming on to the team and wanting to win those big events over the next couple of years. And so I want to help, hopefully make that happen and be alongside them when they get to experience it, because I know they will. It's just a matter of time. But yeah, that hunger, that energy, that youthfulness, like, again, I'm not gonna concede on of my age and being like an elder or a veteran in the sport, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I have to lean into that a little bit more. But yeah, I think it's got my juices flowing a little bit because of that as well, which is cool.
Well, I was curious too, EJ, talking about this team coming together. It obviously happened quite quickly. Of course, you have a connection to the team. You always did, even when you were playing with Team Gushue, because your brother's on the team and you and your brother are so close. But I'm curious to know, like, how it even came together, from your side of things, because I think people were pretty surprised. They were having good results with BJ. I don't think the casual curling fan was expecting a move was coming. Like, did you get a sense when you spared for BJ and Red Deer that maybe this was a change they were looking to make? Or, how did this come about? Because I feel like, people were definitely a little bit surprised by the news.
Yeah, no, and I think that's sort of it. Like, I don't, for myself, I really didn't anticipate playing again probably into until next season, maybe, something after the Brier, as changes usually look to happen, or if they're going to happen, it's generally then. But at the same time, it's, things have definitely changed within the curling landscape over the last couple of years, sorry. And so I was keeping myself ready, I was practicing all the time, throwing pretty much daily, and hoping that there would be, an opportunity, but not expecting it. And so when I had the opportunity to go and spare and play with the team in Red Deer, obviously, I took full advantage of that and wanted to get back in and play, and obviously have the opportunity to play with Ryan again, not knowing if that would present itself, for the next couple of years, or get that opportunity before I was officially sort of done playing. And I think when we got to Red Deer, the first practice, like it was laughs, it was jokes, but it was like serious, we're making shots, and things just felt really natural. And then we got into the event, and same thing, we were playing well, the intensity was there, but again, lots of sort of laughs and jokes and fun on and off the ice. And I think just winning helps for sure, but I think more than anything, all of us left there thinking like that was pretty cool, like that felt like there's something there, and that this could be something that potentially could be pretty special. And for maybe for Matt and Colton, that was something that they thought would allow them to potentially get that that big win that they're looking for. And for me, it was exactly sort of what I wanted to, if I was going to play again and continue to play, is obviously be a part of one of the top teams where I felt like we had the opportunity to win, but also equally, if not more importantly, just be a party in something where I think we could have a ton of fun on and off the ice. It's really natural, it comes easy, it flows well. I think all of that just sort of collided in Red Deer, and from there it was, I think, hard to ignore for all of us.
Yeah, no, some good points. And I just want to go back to what we were talking about earlier. You've obviously I've been sharing a lot of praises about Matt and Colton, and of course your brother Ryan, but
yep.
It's an odd time for these team changes to be happening. I mean, that better than anybody. And, you had mentioned how much, Colton and Matt will sit and talk about curling. We've got about a year until the trials.
Mm-hmm.
What's it like now with them, people that age, it's not what I'm trying to get to. It's not like you're starting from year one and you're making a 4-year plan. You have a year to win this. We talked about your experience. What are you trying to, or what could you see yourself trying to get through to them in terms of making sure you're peaking at the right time? You're going to be firing on all cylinders in just 12 months.
Yeah, I think for me, the one thing, I've wanted to put a lot of time and intention and energy into is like ensuring that it's not like both of these guys are full of confidence, right? But like, I want to make sure that they understand at all times how great they are. Like and especially Colton, coming in, playing a new position. Like, I think Colton is and will be one of the best thirds in the game. And every time he steps on the ice, I want him to know that and feel that. And same with Matt. He's already proven himself as a top skip in the game. He is young, but like, there's no age on winning. Like, when you're ready, you're ready. Matt's ready, Colton's ready. And so I want to do everything I can, shot making wise, sweeping wise, but over and above what I can do for my, in control of my own performance, I want to make sure those two have everything that they need and are always reminded and have the belief that they can win and will win. And again, I want to be a part of that, and I'd love to be a part of that. So I think this next year is just taking into account and the understanding that we have everything that we need to win. We have, the right, shot making capabilities. We have tremendous sweeping. We have a good mix of talent and experience and youth. And then, for Matt and Colton, it's like, this is your time. And let's go ahead and let's take advantage of this. And let's do it now. Why wait? They're going to have a great opportunity next quad, but like, you guys are ready now. So let's go do it. And hopefully that can happen.
I want to pick out a couple things that you said there that I think are really interesting, because you talk about wanting them to know that they're really good. And you're also talking about, wanting to be happy, have laughs on the ice, whatever. And, I know you've talked a little bit about the split with Team Gushue. And, I read an article, Sault Ste. Marie, you gave an interview and you said there was no animosity, but like, is some of that coming from that team? Because it did seem to me at the end that was something that was maybe lacking, just as someone watching, Team Gushue play, that, maybe it wasn't as fun or however you wanted it to be. Is that part of the reason why you think it's important to bring those things to this team?
Not necessarily. Like I think, and again, to the point you just made, it wasn't that like we weren't having fun. I think it's, just sometimes it's like the fit isn't quite, what you all want it to be. And there's sort of different ways of looking at things, or just, different ways of approaching the game, or how things, are on and off the ice. And it's all good. Sometimes it's just, it's not the same. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. And in that case, there was no, like I said, there was nothing bad. It was just, I think, the maturity of us, maybe again later in our careers and veterans of the game, to be able to come together and say, hey, look, we're having a lot of success. Things are going well, but it doesn't feel as easy as it could be. And so, I think all of us realizing too that it goes beyond just the sport. Like you don't want to have to feel like you're really, working hard at it to make it work. And sometimes it's better to just have an understanding that it's maybe not the right fit. And I think that was more the case in that scenario. I will say, coming out of that too, though, like I think the other piece that I was sort of alluding to, and I guess you hit on it a little bit there, John, is that there is more to life than curling. Don't get me wrong, like I'm grateful for the opportunity that I have, and grateful for the experiences that I've been able to to obtain through curling, and the victories and all of that. But again, I think sort of like now later in my career, I want Colton and Matt to realize that, like, you lose a game, feel it for sure. You lose an event, feel it for sure. But like when it's over, it's done. Like you can't do anything about it. There's going to be so many more games and so many more events, and you're so young in your career. So like, just, enjoy it as much as you can, and have an understanding and appreciation that once it's done, to be able to let it go and move on to the next thing, and have some laughs, and enjoy, the company of one another, and enjoy those losses as much as those wins. Cause there's going to be, hopefully a lot more wins than losses, but those losses are going to be there no matter what. So again, I think that's the other piece of it too, is just with that hunger, and I can appreciate and sort of relate back to that. You sort of like, you live and die on every single shot and every single event. And I don't want to take any of that away from this team, but I also want, especially like at a skip position, like that's a hard position, right? Like in terms of sometimes having literally the game, in your hands, when you're throwing to, draw the 4-foot for a win in the 8th end or 10th end, depending on what event you're playing in. And same with Colton, going to a new position from second to third, there's a little bit more on the line with that. So yeah, I think, overall, I just want them to, not that they don't, but continue to realize that, they're going to have my support. They're going to have Ryan's support, and that, there's a little bit more to it than just curling. You got to really enjoy it, because especially with them having a long career, there's going to be lots of ups and downs. And so, just sort of bring that little bit of a reminder every so often.
I think that's a great point, and I'm laughing pretty hard because I'm going to get some looks here because she's right beside me. But my wife is she wasn't a curler. She didn't grow up in the curling world, and when I played those 2 years with Casey and played those Briers, she would watch it and she'd follow it. But she asked me one time, because this was when you were with Team Jacobs and you guys were all quite big, and I never quite had that physique. But I remember her asking, and your locker was next to mine in Ottawa. I think it was Ottawa, and I got home and we were just talking about the week. She said, "What are the Harndens like?" And I said, because I remember after a game, and you were beside, and you were on your cell phone, I think, talking to your kids, and it was like, Dad, Dad, be home soon. And I said, he's not what you think. Like, he's the guy literally in the locker room singing the Itsy Bitsy Spider. Like, so that's a great point. Just about what you said about teaching, maybe those younger people who haven't had those wins yet, like we're talking about, to remember that there is more to life, and feel it, but don't let it absorb you, if you will. You mentioned a couple points as well, just about how, things, it has to be fun on and off the ice at all times. Like, you really have to be gelling as a group. Did you find towards the end of your run with Gushue that there was something a little bit off, just all around, not just so much on the ice, but just in general?
Yeah, I think, again, it's just came down to just different environments, right? That, like, you have to think, like, on both sides. Like, I've only played really within one environment, right? Like, and they've only, for the most part, for a long period of time, I've also operated within a specific environment, right? And it worked really well, in terms of us being able to win. But I think sometimes it's just, what you're comfortable with, and it's hard to separate from that. And sometimes you also have an understanding of what allows, to bring the best out of you. And I think here it just sort of came to the point where it felt a little too hard or forced at times. And we tried a bunch of things. We had really good conversations to try to, figure this out in a way that it would feel really good and natural for all of us. And I think I think we did come to the realization that it was just not where everyone wanted it to be. And so it was easier to just sort of move forward, because, like, and again, for me, like, I want to play, don't get me wrong. And I love playing, and of course I want to win. But I think for all of us, you saw the maturity where it's like, we also want to make sure that we're all, enjoying it as much as we can, and that it feels as natural as possible. And I think in this case, it just sort of wasn't getting to that point where, or to that place where we wanted it to be. And I think too, like, I don't think it's all that surprising, like, in a way, right? Again, when you come from such established teams where you're so used to how people operate, or even if, for a period of time, things weren't there, you had years to figure that out. Where we don't really have that now, right? Because we're so fixated on, just the 4-year cycle. And for, with Brad and Mark, Jeff, myself, we all are sort of near the tail end of our careers. So it's not like we had another 4 years after this to figure it out. Like, who knows what happens after this next cycle. And I think you've sort of seen that with, teams in general, whether it's maybe more so on the men's versus on the women's side. But after this last cycle and the team and the changes that happened, there was, some long-standing teams that were no longer there, and now you're trying to find different places where you could sort of plug in or form something new. And I feel like it's not just with, Team Gushue or Team Dunstone. You saw it with, team previous to, Bottcher. Like, there's a lot of figuring out still happening. And I think, it's potentially, maybe, who knows, not even the end of this yet. Whether, there's a change at the end of this year, I wouldn't be shocked. I also wouldn't be surprised if it didn't happen. But, when I kind of sit back and you reflect on it, like, it's not all that surprising. And I also think it showcases, where our sport is at, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's not, where Canada is just dominating anymore. Like, we're literally starting to sort of play catch up with some other countries, as it relates to, like, medaling, not only medaling, but, like, standing on top of the podium at World Championships, at Olympics. And so I don't see it as a huge surprise when you see changes being made, mid-season, or even at the beginning of a season versus wait until the end of the year. I think it showcases, where we're at as a country, and the focus on not just getting to a world championship, but, like, getting to a world championship and feeling like you could win. And not that, the top teams don't feel like that, but I feel like there's still that little sort of feeling out process, or a little bit of, little things missing that people would like to feel a little bit better about.
Well, I'm curious too, EJ, like I've been dying to ask you this for like 18 months since it happened, but you talk about how, you had done things a certain way for so long, right? Like you play with your brother, you play with your cousin, you have a great relationship. You obviously Fry was a part of that mix for a long time. And then Mark Kennedy was a part of that mix. And like you said, you guys had your way of doing things, and that was the way it was. And then, you kind of move into a new program with Brad, and he has his own way of doing things. And I'm curious how much of the first Brier Final, when you played against your brother, I think a lot of people were sort of struck by the emotions in that game, both you and your brother, giving really emotional interviews both before and after the game and everything. And I remember feeling at the time like, okay, I on one level, I understand this, but like on another level, it seemed like almost surprising because we don't see that a lot in curling. Yeah. Was some of that emotion like you kind of realizing like, oh shit, maybe things are never going to be the way that they were again?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it was like, for me, hard to separate from that. Like I didn't realize how hard it would be to not play with Ryan again. I didn't realize how hard it would be to not play with Brad again. Obviously playing Ryan in the Brier Final the very first year was really hard. Just seeing them at events but not being with them, I think was always a little bit tough for me, because Ryan and obviously Brad's our first cousin, and Ryan and I are brothers. So yeah, there's the family element, but like we're literally like best friends. We spent all summer together, right? Like Brad and myself and our families are always together, usually on the weekends with, our kids are the same age. We both have older daughters and younger sons, essentially the same age. Ryan, same thing, like, I'm with him a ton. And so, yeah, I think, and we're used to practicing together and traveling together. And now I'm traveling on my own, practicing on my own. Yeah, it was just different, very, very different. And I think hard at times to separate from, what I was used to for a long period of time. And yeah, so I think, John, to your point, like, when I talked with Ryan about that, and some other individuals in terms of like, playing with Ryan again, like it was just, it feels really good. I think that probably played into quite a bit of it as well, just the unique sort of circumstances and relationship that we have beyond just being brothers, and with Brad as as a cousin. Like even playing Brad, and it's a little different now, like playing Brad and Swift Current. That's Ryan and I now playing Brad versus me just playing Brad or me just playing Ryan. And certainly I want to win, but like, I'm happy for Brad now when he wins. He made a great shot to beat us in Swift Current. First thing I said was, great shot, congratulations. Yeah. Probably would have said the same thing to anyone else. Probably maybe not meant it as much as I did. But I see him on the plane and just we laugh and have conversations like, who cares about what just happened? And so yeah, we have a pretty special relationship that was on full display, Ryan and I, during the Brier, and very similar with Brad, Ryan as well.
It's like curling's version of Cobra Kai. I don't know if you watched the show, but it's like one time it's like you're once on this side. Yeah. No, EJ, this is my last question on this subject. And, I've been waiting a long time to ask you this because you've experienced, the Gushue fandom and how passionate their fans are. And I mean, it's no secret everywhere we go, not just Newfoundland, they're the loudest applause in the building. They have passionate fans who follow their every move. To my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is your first kind of podcast sort of public interview. Mm-hmm. So I just want to give you the opportunity just to speak to them, to the fans, and who have followed you for a couple of years. If there's anything you want to say to them, what would that be?
Oh, just thank you. I'm gonna miss that for sure.
Wait, you hate me now? What the hell?
Yeah. And it's all good. I get it, right? Like if you have to, you're cheering against myself now. I get that. But no, like all joking aside, I mean, it's been phenomenal to be on that side of it and to feel the support that team has, and rightfully so. That was pretty incredible. Like that was special. Like I'll remember obviously all the great, experiences that I had with the team, and good conversations, and some laughter, and the wins and that sort of thing. But like the support, that I think is probably going to be like the one thing out of that, my entire experience with the team that I'll never forget, like, or probably was more special than anything else. Like, I mean, the wins were pretty incredible. Don't get me wrong. I really wanted to win another Brier, and was able to do that obviously 2 years in a row, which was phenomenal, and grateful to have that experience with the guys. But the experience that goes along with that, like that's pretty phenomenal. And that was on full display again in St. John's there, right? And so yeah, I'd say thanks. I don't expect it, but I'll appreciate any sort of love that I continue to get.
Buddy, they booed Brett Glenn. You have no chance.
Any residual sort of like support that comes my way because of that, I'll take it. So yeah, no, thanks so much. That was incredibly special, and yeah, I'll still like it when I'm around it and feeling it maybe on the opposite side. I guess I'm back to the other side where I'm going to try to keep people as quiet as possible.
EJ,
but
just a
no,
piece of advice.
Yeah.
If you really want perhaps the older generations of fans to like you, you should swear on the podcast.
Yeah, I
Facebook
saw that.
Really loved that.
They love when you do that.
Yeah.
The iPads were just going wild.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. That was pretty entertaining.
EJ, I usually on the show do a little bit of digging on our guests to maybe find out a story that maybe wouldn't get told normally, or just something about them. And I heard a great story that I know that our fans will love, and this actually goes back. We've talked quite a bit about your old team with your brother and Brad and Ryan Fry. Can you tell me a little bit about the wisdom tooth incident?
Oh man, that Ryan Fry, he had I think he had his wisdom teeth pulled, and then we flew I think a few days later to Banff for the Skins game, and Fry being Fry, I don't think he followed the instructions all that well, and I think he ended up eating popcorn or something that he wasn't supposed to shortly thereafter, and he was a little swollen. And so we thought it was pretty funny, right? You get up and walk past them, and like, okay, that's getting a little more swollen. And then I remember I walked past them like probably three quarters of the way through the flight, and he has his hand in his mouth, like down his cheek, and his cheek is huge. It's like out to here. And I went to bug him. He just looked at me and he shook his head, like, no, like it's not that time. So we landed right away. He has to go and get like basically like emergency like surgery. I don't know where it happened. I forget exactly where, but long story short, he got it taken care of. It was all good. We were able to play and have some fun. But yeah, there's not too many times where I held back on bugging Fry. We were always notorious for bugging one another. Fry and Brad usually took the brunt of it just because they were really good sports with it. That was the one time where I'm like, no, I got to hold back. Like he's in too much pain and too much discomfort, poor guy.
Well, if
you laugh at it now, though.
If you look up online like what you shouldn't eat after a wisdom tooth removal, one of the first things that pops up is popcorn. It's do not eat it. Yeah. It's hard. It can get stuck in the hole.
That's what happened, and I'm pretty almost positive that's what happened. So that's
take him to the movies.
Yeah, I love him. I think maybe Fry was just trying to see if he could prove them wrong. I don't.
It's good to see. It's good to see you back, EJ.
Yeah, happy to be back. Like I said, I have so much love and passion for the sport. Definitely still feel like I have lots of really good shots left in me, and so I'm excited to see what's going to happen here over the next little bit.
We are too. Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us on the show, EJ. It was a pleasure. We appreciate us being the first podcast you stopped by after all the shakeups. And best of luck with the new squad. And also, Merry Christmas. Enjoy the holidays.
Thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate it. Love what you're doing. Love the podcast. It's great for the sport. So keep up the great work. Appreciate you having me on. And have a good Christmas. I'm off to some warm weather tomorrow. So enjoy.
Lucky.
No curling for a bit.
Beautiful here in Charlottetown right now.
Yeah. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great one.
Awesome. Thanks, EJ. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye. So there you have it. A great chat with EJ Harnden. Couldn't love it more. So glad that he decided to show up on our podcast, and it's his first podcast appearance since all the news dropped. So we appreciate him joining us. That was great. And Robbie, it is the end of the show, which means it's time to play a game.
Oh dear.
Robbie, I'm taking it easy on you because Christmas is coming up, and I feel like it's only right that we play a Christmas themed game.
I'm not the best. You know what? I'll try my best.
Well, it's not trivia. It's not trivia.
Oh, I know.
Okay.
I'm more of a Halloween guy.
Are you familiar with blind ranking?
No, explain it to me.
Okay, so I'm going to give you 6 Christmas movies, and without knowing what the other movies on the list are, you need to tell me where you rank the movie 1 to 6. And you can only use each ranking once. So like at the end, you'll have a ranking, but you don't know what movies are coming.
Okay. So 1 to 6. Okay.
So 1 to 6. Okay. So we're going to start with The Grinch, and I'm talking about the Jim Carrey version of The Grinch. Where do you rank that 1 to 6?
5.
Okay. Not a huge Grinch fan. All right.
I like the new one.
Okay. Yeah. With Benedict
of my son,
Cumberbatch.
we watch it every morning. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So we've got The Grinch at number 5. We will go from there to National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Number 1.
1.
Absolutely number 1.
You don't even care what else is coming.
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not. No.
All right.
I love that movie so much.
Okay. We'll see. Okay. Next, Home Alone.
2.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, Home Alone, classic. Okay. Next, The Santa Claus.
Ooh. I'm going to put that 4.
4. Okay.
I love that movie, but
you're leaving 3 open.
I'm leaving 3 open. So we got 6 and 3 left, correct?
Yep. Yes, exactly. Okay. Christmas Story.
3.
Okay, that's your 3.
Yeah.
All right, and then your final one. I hope you don't love this movie, Robbie, because it is going to be last place for you, but it's A Charlie Brown Christmas.
Yeah, 6.
You're fine with that at 6? Okay. All right. I love Charlie Brown Christmas.
The only thing, and listen, this is not the time for a debate, but if Batman Returns had came out of your mouth, we might have had to re-record.
I don't count that as. I mean, okay, come on. So your final ranking: Christmas Vacation 1, Home Alone 2, Christmas Story 3, The Santa Claus 4, The Grinch 5, and Charlie Brown Christmas 6.
Yep, absolutely.
You like that?
Yeah, and you know what? I'm open to switching 3 and 4, but Charlie,
you might put Santa Claus ahead of Christmas Story.
Yeah, Charlie just drove me nuts. Couldn't stand his voice, so that's why that was the difference. But
fair enough. Well, there you have it. I hope you have a Merry Christmas, a Happy Holidays, whatever you're doing this December to celebrate. Hope you get to spend some time with loved ones and enjoy the season. We will be back in the new year. We'll definitely do an episode before Guelph, but we are going to take a little bit of time off here to enjoy the holidays ourselves. But we will see you in 2025. Lots of great curling stuff to come. If you like the show, please rate and review it on whatever podcast app you're listening to it on. Subscribe. That always helps us. You can also, if you want to see a video of this episode, head on over to our YouTube page. We're also on all the social media channels at the Broom Brothers. Thank you so much for making this last half of 2024 great for us. We hope it was great for you too. Have a great new year, and we'll see you in 2025. Goodbye.
See you, everybody. Happy holidays.